right, Ian. We like forgot to talk about this last week. About this this happened. It seems like this stuff drops usually right before an event happens, but this happened right before PRGE on October 18th. $1 million retro game sale that happened in Denver. Man named Eric Nierman boarded a plane. This is a Washington Post article. Okay, just put that out there. I don't know how this happened. A dentist, Nierman, one of the world's most avid video game collectors, procured more than 3 dozen of the most sought-after vintage games for $1.02 million. That's $1,020,000.
That's insane.
The sale was one of the largest in the hobby's still nascent history. I like that. It means it's rising. According to collecting experts, though no single source tracks such exchanges. All the games are factory sealed, and most are first edition releases that a third-party grading company said are one of a kind, or at least one of only 2 or 3, that remain in such condition and are known to exist in collectors' hands. Okay, Ian. I'm really curious about how this got to the Washington Post. That's really a strange outlet for something like this.
Sure.
Freelance writer Stephen C. Wright contributed to the report, and the article is done by someone named Jacob Bogage, a national sports writer and blogger. Maybe he knows some of these people involved. I have no idea how this gets on the radar. Maybe it was leaked by people behind the scenes. It's in someone like Heritage Auctions' best interest that this information gets out there, like the big sales, like the $1 million, the $100,000 Super Mario Brothers, stuff like that. So these were sticker sealed black box games and early Nintendo releases like that. He's holding in the picture an original arcade Mario Brothers 9.2, and then a Gumshoe 9.2. Good old Gumshoe. I'm just going to read the article. With the additions from Denver, Nierman and a small group of partners called the Video Game Club obtained sticker-sealed black box copies of Nintendo Entertainment System Mario Brothers Arcade Edition. The 2 known copies of Golf that are sticker-sealed. There's only 2 sticker-sealed Golfs that we know of, really, that are still sealed. And the only known copy of Balloon Fight and the only known copy of Gumshoe. So this is a club. So this means that this is an investment group. Let's not call it a club anymore.
Right.
This is an investment group.
Exactly.
And there was an investment group that bought the $100,000 Super Mario Brothers sticker seal. That was the second edition one. These are investor groups. And this is what happened with Magic cards and Pokemon cards. And you get groups of people that come together and invest in this stuff. Yep. Which is fine. Let's call it what it is. It's not a club anymore. It's an investment group. They're not having their Tuesday clubhouse meetings, going over their sealed games, sitting on wooden benches. That's like a Little Rascals thing now. Anyway, the purchase from 3 collectors who spent 52 combined years amassing the items is a watershed moment for the hobby, experts say. Who are the experts? We'll get into that, both in terms of the number of games exchanged and the price point in which Nierman purchased them. These are some of the holy grails and cream of the crop in terms of having this historic value, said Dennis Kahn, president and chief executive of Wata Games. And I like Dennis, but...
Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Dennis. What's going on? I just think it's funny that now we have to shift. We have to shift the goalpost, Ian. Pat's shifting the goalpost closer to you in terms of what's a holy grail video game item. We're shifting the goalpost a little bit. Because now, Ian, it's not just...
We're not shifting.
No,
we're creating.
We're creating new goalposts.
We're creating new goalposts.
We're fascinating.
That's what ever since... and that's fine, but that's the big difference. It's ever since Wata got basically became the standard, and good for them.
A year ago,
ever since they became the standard and the Heritage Auction stuff happened, we're not moving goalposts. We're creating new goalposts, but using the same
catch terms.
Yeah, the same ball. It's video games, but it's a completely different hobby.
Yeah, because I don't think any
or it feels like a completely different.
It's a different hobby. Historically, no video game collector would tell you that Balloon Fight or Gumshoe or the original NES Black Box Golf would be holy grails in any sense of the word or any fashion, because they are very common games. Well, Golf is, and Balloon Fight and Gumshoe are not that. Gumshoe's uncommon, but not that hard to find here. So it's the state of these games is what's interesting to Heritage Auctions.
We're collecting state and condition, not games.
Yes. They bring up the $100,000 Super Mario Brothers in this article. It's a classic case of supply and demand, said Valerie Miklecki, the video game consignment director at Heritage Auctions. Demand is increasing. more people are coming interested. And these games are not easy to find in this condition. That's what's driving the market growth at this point, and people get competitive. Jesus Christ, can we get people that comment on this stuff that do not have a vested interest in saying these things? That's my problem with these articles.
And that's what I would like to. Everyone who's correct, anyone who's quoted as talking about, and this has been going on for the past year, people who are quoted and talking about this are the people who stand to make
the
money
most
from it.
Holy shit, Heritage Auctions makes like 20% on these auctions. So they wanted to pump up this. I'm sure Valerie's a nice person. I can guarantee you that Ian and I know a lot more about video game collecting than Valerie does.
I'm not going to go out and say things like that.
You're not going to guarantee it? I'll guarantee that Ian knows more about video game collecting.
I don't know the person, so I'm not going to make assumptions.
This is the point, though, Ian, that these experts are people that work for these companies.
Sure.
They are now the experts at this stuff.
Right.
The people that a year and a half ago didn't give a shit about these games. There was no auctioning on this stuff 2 years ago. It didn't exist. And now they're experts at it. That's the point I'm trying to make here. As the video game collecting industry grew during the late 2000s, hobbyists gravitated towards the games with which they grew up. In video gaming's short history, those are also some of the first console games in the market. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. With third-party grading services entered the hobby, when collectors finally had an objective measure of one game's value versus another's, similar to the system that had been placed for years in baseball card and comic book collecting. Well, no, we always kind of knew because there was always eBay, and we always kind of knew when something exchanged hands privately, and that's actually something that none of these games value now, and price charting never had a lot of the private sales integrated into the site, which is something I brought up to the head of price charting a couple years ago. I think they started to do them here and there. That's what baseball cards and comic books always hung their hats on, is that they had to include private sales because they started making their guides back in the the 80s and 90s when there wasn't eBay. So
Sure.
they had to have people scour conventions and find out and ask people, what are these baseball cards and comic books selling about? And video games has been backwards. It's always been mostly public eBay sales with people in the know knowing, okay, privately we know that NWC sold for that through Nintendo Age or something. It's always been backwards that. And they asked John Hancock gets a quote in here. It comes in waves with the waves.
Says what I always say about collecting. It comes
in waves,
it's right.
But the waves build upon each other, said John Hancock. 15 to 20 years after a console comes out, the people who grew up on it get their first real jobs, have a little bit of disposable income, and decide to start collecting. We're already starting the PlayStation 2 and Wii wave.
The first drug that's taken people's money is nostalgia. That's what happens.
Which is interesting, though, because that doesn't coincide with the games that are bought here, though, because this is 35 years later, so this is something different.
Yeah,
it's because it's different. It's not people getting nostalgia. That was my argument before about people getting nostalgia for games. Then you have to have it sealed and slabbed.
What John says there is right about collecting in general, but it's different for this.
It has given the rise to a niche industry of retro gamers who record themselves playing vintage video games on sites such as Twitch and YouTube. It's only natural, I suppose, but I just play the games that matter to me, said Jason Lindsay, who plays under the name Middle Jesus Rocks. Going on and on and on and on and on. So, that's. I'm not going to read the rest of it here unless you want to look at a comment that you like.
No, we're good.
Here. I will say this, because I always slap back at this. Let's see. Judging from everything I've seen in collecting over the years, there's no reason that this shouldn't develop into a hobby like baseball cards or comic books, Merriman said. Again, the guy who just invested in the stuff telling you this stuff's going to be like comic books and baseball cards.
Yes.
I mean comic books, this is quotes. I mean comic books, you tell me what they have that a video game doesn't. They have the box art. They have the same nostalgia. If comic books can sell for 1 million, there's no reason a video game shouldn't be able to do the same. I guess in theory you are correct, but there's an entirely different set of conditions of comic book collecting versus game collecting. And again, you're trying to make it different when I say that 99% of video game collectors do not need a graded Kid Icarus in order to satisfy their soul. That's the difference. There's no a sealed Action Comics #1 versus an Action Comics #1 that'll appeal to someone else. They're all Action Comics #1. Yes, the condition varies, but the item's the same. And with Kid Icarus, the cartridge and a complete in box and a sealed game, to 99% of collectors, they are materially the same exact thing. And that's what sealed collectors and people promoting this are trying to draw in the others in order to agree with them about that. No, these are different entities here. All right, anything else to add here? Or are we good?
I'm good on that topic forever and ever.
Forever and ever.